Nothing could beat a simple game. Like, sometimes I'm in for a game that has a grandiose narrative, complex mechanics, or is just something pretty experimental. But sometimes making a game that's direct, modest, and clean can create some of the best gaming experiences. This is the essential idea of gaming since the early days of the arcade. Even many games today have this vital element buried into the core of their identity and game design. And one game that I think represents a pure, straightforward, and fun experience is the 2009 release, Plants vs. Zombies. Anyone who grew up in the late 2000s and the early 2010s have their own PvZ story. Maybe they had it on PC, console, or most likely on phone, maybe even DS for one of those people that actually had it on DS. There's a small collection of iconic, what I like to call app games, which is a term I use for the big early mobile games, because mobile games after a certain time frame essentially exist in a completely different environment. Gacha games suck. To give my own Plants vs. Zombies story, if you'll humor me, mine is a bit different than most people's. As I've said before on this channel, I wasn't exactly the most financially inclined as a kid. I didn't really have any Wi-Fi at my house until like middle school, but I knew friends who had the internet and likely had PvZ on their computers, consoles, etc. To me, Plants vs. Zombies and Chili's go hand in hand. Yes, the restaurant chain, Chili's. Let me explain. Chili's in the early 2010s introduced these little devices called Ziosks. A small tablet-like device at each table that, if you paid an extra $1.99 on your bill, it would allow you to play all sorts of things, games, and even order on it. My family would go to Chili's pretty often for celebrations or if we just wanted to go out to eat. And honestly, we still do, but not as often, because life gets busy when you get older. So yeah, it's one of my warm little childhood memories, going to Chili's and playing Plants vs. Zombies. I mean, what kid wouldn't love sitting in a restaurant, eating quesadillas, and playing a ton of Plants vs. Zombies? Recently, though, I had this growing urge to go back to this game and replay it, just to see if it was as good as I remember. That and Oni Plays, the best couch play channel on YouTube, that's a fact by the way, don't look it up, started a playthrough of the game, so that probably helps too. So that brings me to the question. Does it still hold up? Well, that's what I made this video for. So sit back, relax, and tell me what's your favorite plant or zombie in the comments below. And let's find out if Plants vs. Zombies still holds up. The development history of PvZ is honestly one of a small indie effort, one that would eventually bring one man, a studio, and so many more into gaming stardom. The creator of Plants vs. Zombies and lead developer of the first game is a man named George Fan, or is it Fan? I don't really know, who had a lengthy career in the world of gaming. He first started out making Java games for the website prizegames.com, and there he made a puzzle game for them called Wrath of the Gopher. From there he grew his set of skills and kept developing more, eventually making the game Insane Aquarium, as well as making a studio called Flying Bear Entertainment. In 2002, the game he made, Insane Aquarium, became a finalist at the Independent Games Festival, and that got eyes on him. He'd later get a job at Blizzard, while simultaneously developing Insane Aquarium Deluxe for a small company called PopCap Games. They'll be important later. Blizzard allowed Fan to work on Insane Aquarium during his breaks with them because he was closer to a freelance developer on their projects than anyone who was traditionally signed on. But when he was working with Blizzard, he was working on things like enemy design and AI interactions for Diablo 3. But during that time, he had a seed of an idea growing in his mind. A game inspired by tower defense mods of Warcraft 3, but combining it with Insane Aquarium and putting it onto the Nintendo DS. That, and he wanted to make a tower defense game that could be simple yet hard to master, eventually making up the idea of using lanes for the game. Initially, he wanted the gimmick to be that all the enemies were aliens from his first game, and your units were plants, but then decided that zombies would be distinct from the plants, so he went with that. He originally was developing the game independently until, lo and behold, PopCap Games came to him and said they'd help him develop the game, even providing a small team to work with him. After this, the game would be developed smoothly and acquire even more influences. Apparently, on top of being influenced by Warcraft 3 and Insane Aquarium, it was influenced by Magic the Gathering, Tapper, and the Swiss Family Robinson? I'm not so sure about that one, but okay, I guess. And yeah, the game was a big success for PopCap, getting heaps of critical praise and selling tons of copies. And also caught the eye of EA. This is where the story gets a bit sad. EA eventually bought out PopCap in 2011 and was, of course, trying to force them into making games on a freemium model. I think I'm gonna be sick. On top of all that, Fan didn't seem to agree with EA's direction of PopCap and was soon laid off. It really is a damn tragedy because Fan seemed to want to make games that were just fun, simple, yet complex games for people who wanted to play without needing to pay for the basic elements of it. He just wanted a simple payment to purchase the game and then you just have it, like how a game really should be. Of course, EA, being the demonic embodiment of greed they are, didn't want that, even later on making people watch advertisements to use some of the lawnmowers in the mobile version of Plants vs. Zombies. That's just a whole other level of evil, man. Luckily though, FOM would still make games, just not under EA's hyper-capitalistic regime, instead going on to make the game Octageddon and started up a small studio, All Yes Games. So, I guess it wasn't all bad, but that's the general history of Plants vs. Zombies, its creator and its development. With all that being said, I guess it's time to get into the game itself. Usually, I start a review of most things by talking about the plot, characters, and the general story of whatever I'm making a video on. But PvZ doesn't really have a big plot. It has a central concept, but it's not trying to introduce you to charming or nuanced characters. Not that I'm complaining, I'm not going to judge a piece of art on something it's not trying to be. That'd be like negatively reviewing Pac-Man because it doesn't have a narrative. It's just simply not part of the package. There is one character the player interacts with, and that's Crazy Dave, and he's fine. He's literally just there to be a kooky little character in between gameplay. He's not really funny, just sort of a crazy, wacky guy. Sometimes he shows up to give tutorials, other times he's just saying nonsense. He's just kind of there to me, I guess. Now let's actually talk about the main course of the game, the gameplay, which is super addicting, but in the good sort of way, not the we're gonna siphon all your time kind of way. It's so easy to learn how to play, and yet there's so many different strategies you could pull off. I think I've seen everyone playing this game rely on completely different plants and strategies. Some prefer more insta-kills like the Chomper and the Squash, while others prefer defensive play with walnuts and potatoes. Me, I usually go for an overwhelming offense approach, usually planting my pea shooters and snow peas with a front layer of gloom shrooms because it's seriously one of the most busted plants in the whole game, though occasionally I'll mix in some kernel pults and melon pults, though some plants are much better than others. That's to be expected when there's so many different plants to pick from. But there are also some that are good, but their cool-off times maybe can be a bit shortened to make them a bit better. Like, the Tangle Kelp was good, but I felt like it could use a slightly shorter cool-off time. I know it is an instant kill plant, but so was the Squash, which costs more and basically achieves the same function. The only difference between the two being that the Tangle Kelp only works in water. Let's actually take that point and pivot into a new discussion. The game's difficulty. I wouldn't say this game is insanely difficult. I mean, it's not exactly Ninja Gaiden, but it delivers a fair challenge. I'd say the difficulty curve in this game is hill-shaped. Levels 1 and 2, which are Front Yard Day and Front Yard Night respectively, are pretty easy. They're not too difficult and are more or less the tutorial levels. Now, the backyard levels with the pool, the difficulty spikes heavily here, mainly because the two central lanes are just more or less being taken away from you. That and the plants you're given that don't need lily pads to be there in the water are pretty ass. Many of the mushrooms in this game are great, but damn does the sea shroom not do anything. And I've already talked about how the Tangle Kelp has a way too long recharge time. However, the roof levels don't feel as difficult as the pool ones. On paper, it should be harder. You have to place down flower pots to create spaces, but its difficulty is alleviated because the catapult plants are really good actually. The kernel pult and the melon pult are some of the better plants in the game. Final boss at the end of the roof level is genuinely pretty fun. It's taking the conveyor belt minigame and making it super chaotic. It even uses the game's elemental effects to keep you on your toes, using the freeze shroom and the jalapeno in fun ways to counter his attacks. Speaking of which, let's talk about the minigames. I'd say most of them are good. I personally like the conveyor belt and slot minigames the most, and the Zen Garden is really nice, but I don't know if it's a minigame or not. The only minigame I don't like, and this may be controversial, is Zombie Bowling. It's the first minigame they make you play, and I just don't care for it. I think it doesn't help that you never fully know which direction a walnut is going to turn unless it's literally at a wall. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but Zombie Bowling always makes me groan in annoyance. One last thing I need to mention is the game's music. It's genuinely super great. It takes a lot of the same chords and themes and turns them all into different sounds and atmospheres. It's super cohesive and fun, but come on, we all know the best song here. This song is genuinely one of the best completion bonuses in any game. This song is super catchy, also having a lot of fun, poppy sounds with some goofy lyrics, but also using a lot of the sound effects you hear in the game to add to the beat. The record scratch you hear when you can't select a plant is in the song, and it's really fun. It just makes a fun little bow at the end of a fun, quick game. Plants vs. Zombies is a game that shows the standard of a bygone era, about how, over a decade ago, a $5 game could deliver you so much. A game with fun gameplay loops, and hours of extra modes, and so much more. It feels like many games, but not all, lock major features or literal things a game needs behind a massive paywall or battle passes or something. It feels like half the games these days are either asking you to spend most of your money or spend most of your time. There's this malignant, almost cancerous ethos in many games these days, just to be, well, time wasters. But Plants vs. Zombies, well, it's not trying to be anything more than a simple game for you to play. As I said at the start, nothing beats a simple game. Want to know why so many of those arcade classics still hold up? Because sure, back at the arcades they were all wanting to get your coins, but it wasn't essentially asking for your wallet every 9 seconds. It's because they were fun, and attention-grabbing first and foremost. In many ways, PvZ was the modern revival of this kind of formula, and to this day, it still upholds those classic fundamental values that I believe should be within all games. I know it's ironic I'm even using this Nintendo quote because of how greedy they've become the last couple years, but one quote that will always ring in my head when it comes to modern games is this one by Reggie Fils-Aimé. If it's not fun, why bother? Now, I know not every game doesn't fit the traditional application of the word fun, but I tend to translate it as this. If a game is not engaging or fun, then why play it? I think Plants vs. Zombies shows us that it doesn't take anything super complex to make a great game. And to me, that's what makes Plants vs. Zombies a masterpiece. And yeah, that's all I really got to say about that. Plants vs. Zombies, of course, was a game that I think many of us grew up with, or maybe some of us didn't grow up with if you're already an adult when it came out, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with that either. But yeah, with all that being said, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you not? Do you think I'm a genius? Do you think I'm a moron? Well, let me know in the comments below. Honestly, all of it helps, so I really don't care. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.